Billionaire finds poor girl digging his wife's grave. What she reveals shocks everyone. The sun was setting over the sprawling estate of Alexander Hargrave, one of the wealthiest men in the country. The sky was painted with streaks of gold and crimson, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns and towering marble pillars of his mansion. Alexander, a man known for his iron will and unshakable demeanor, had returned from a long business trip to find the peace of his estate disturbed by an unsettling sight. He had always been meticulous, and even the faintest anomaly did not escape his notice. As he drove past the edge of his private garden, a figure crouched near a patch of freshly turned earth caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a gardener. He had several, but something about the way the figure moved, the furtive glances over her shoulder, made his blood run cold. Alexander stepped out of his black Bentley and approached cautiously. The closer he got, the clearer it became. A young girl, no older than 19, dressed in tattered clothes, was digging frantically in the soil. Her hands were raw and bleeding, and her eyes darted nervously as she worked. The moonlight reflected off the silver bracelet on Alexander's wrist as he spoke, his voice a mixture of authority and disbelief. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his tone sharp enough to cut through the night air. The girl froze, clutching the shovel as if it were a lifeline. Dirt clung to her hair and face, streaking her once fair skin with the grime of her desperate labor. She opened her mouth to speak but hesitated, the weight of her actions pressing down on her like the soil she was moving. I didn't mean any harm, sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. Alexander's eyes narrowed. "Digging my wife's grave? Who are you, and why are you doing this?" The girl dropped the shovel and fell to her knees, her face streaked with tears. I know how it looks," she stammered. "But I'm not here to hurt anyone. Please, just listen." Alexander, though furious, was also curious. There was something in her eyes, something desperate, something honest, that made him pause. He signaled for his assistant to call the police but held her there, demanding an explanation. "My name is Lila," she began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "I work at the shelter in the city. I've seen things, terrible things. I know your wife, Mrs. Hargrave. She's been coming to our shelter for months, helping in secret. No one knows. But she's in danger, sir. I had to warn her, or at least protect her." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Protect her? By digging a grave for her? Do you have any idea how insane this sounds?" "I know," Lila cried. "I know it looks insane. But I had no other choice. Someone's planning to harm her, sir. I overheard men talking. They think your wife has evidence against them. I tried to tell the authorities, but no one believed me. So I came here, to make a plan. I thought, if I could show her she wasn't alone, maybe she'd listen to me." Alexander stared at her, the anger in his chest battling the intrigue that had begun to take root. His wife, Isabella, had always been secretive about her charitable work. She'd never mentioned the dangers she faced, always claiming her efforts were small contributions that mattered. "Why didn't you come to me directly?" he asked, his voice low, almost trembling with the effort of holding back rage. "I couldn't," Lila admitted, tears flowing freely now. "I knew you'd think I was crazy. I couldn't risk her life. I thought if I prepared this," she gestured to the half-dug grave. "If I prepared this, at least she'd understand the danger and trust me. I never meant to scare you, sir. I swear." Alexander sank to a nearby bench, rubbing his forehead. The weight of her words sank in. He had spent years building walls around himself, walls of money, power, and control, but he had never anticipated this. Someone from the outside world, someone completely unrelated to his business, had risked everything to protect his wife. "Where is she now?" he asked, his voice quieter. "She's still in the city," Lila said. "She doesn't know I'm here yet. She trusts me, sir. I've been helping her quietly, keeping her safe, making sure she's never alone when she's in danger. But it's escalating. I overheard them planning something serious. That's why I came here." Alexander's mind raced. He had always believed in handling threats with power, with money, with influence. But here was a young girl, armed with nothing but courage and conviction, taking risks he wouldn't even consider. "Take me to her," he said finally. "Now." The drive to the city was tense. Alexander hardly spoke, his mind a whirlwind of fear, anger, and admiration. Lila remained quiet, focusing entirely on navigating the streets. When they finally arrived at the small, inconspicuous shelter, they found Isabella arranging supplies for the homeless children who relied on the place. She looked up, startled, when she saw Alexander and the young girl standing at the entrance. "Alexander," she said, her voice a mix of surprise and relief. "What are you doing here?" Before he could answer, Lila stepped forward. "I had to warn you, Mrs. Hargrave. There are people who want to hurt you. I tried to find a way to make you listen. I didn't know any other way. I'm sorry if I frightened anyone." Isabella's eyes widened, and then she did something unexpected. She pulled Lila into a tight embrace. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for trusting me enough to protect me. And thank you for risking yourself. I had no idea it was this serious." Alexander, standing beside them, felt a strange swell of pride and relief. His wife's secret life of quiet heroism, the young girl's bravery, it all collided in a moment of raw truth. But there was no time to linger. Isabella quickly gathered her things, and with Alexander and Lila following closely, they moved to a safer location, one of the many properties Alexander owned but rarely visited. There, in a fortified room with security cameras and guards, Isabella explained everything. A powerful crime syndicate had discovered her charitable work. They were trying to eliminate anyone who could testify against their illegal operations. She had kept it hidden to protect her family, but she never anticipated the lengths they would go. Lila, working at the shelter, had overheard their plans and realized the danger before anyone else. Alexander listened in silence, finally understanding why the girl had resorted to such drastic measures. It was not madness, it was courage, ingenuity, and loyalty. By the time dawn broke, a plan was in motion. Alexander used his connections to ensure the syndicate members were being watched, tracked, and ultimately neutralized. Law enforcement, working alongside him, moved swiftly. In the chaos, Isabella continued her work quietly, undeterred but now fully protected. Later, as the sun rose, Alexander returned to the estate with Lila and Isabella. He looked at the girl, who had risked everything for strangers she barely knew, and made a decision that would change her life forever. "You saved my wife," he said, his voice steady. "And in doing so, you saved countless others. You acted when no one else would. I want you to work with me, Lila. Not for money, not for fame, but to protect the people who cannot protect themselves." Lila blinked, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Alexander replied with a faint smile. "Just promise me you'll continue doing what you do best. And I'll make sure you never have to do it alone again." In the weeks that followed, the story of Lila's bravery began to emerge. The media caught wind of the incident, but the details were carefully controlled. The world saw a narrative of courage and loyalty, not of desperation and fear. Alexander and Isabella, ever private, allowed Lila to step into a role that suited her talents and her heart, a guardian of the helpless, a shield against the darkness that lurked in the shadows of wealth and power. And as for the grave that had once been dug under the moonlight, it remained untouched, a silent reminder of a night when courage triumphed over fear, when a young girl's bravery changed the course of many lives, and when a billionaire learned that true wealth is not measured in money, but in the people willing to risk everything for what is right.